You know that feeling, right? Where you know there are important things you want to tackle, maybe things you really need to do.
Oh, yeah. But you just can't seem to get started.
Exactly. Or maybe you feel like you're spinning your wheels all day, busy, 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 answering emails, jumping between tasks.
But at the end of the day, those big, meaningful projects, they haven't budged. Still sitting there.
Right. We slap labels on it, procrastination, maybe even, laziness, or just that really frustrating feeling of being busy but not actually effective.
It's incredibly common, that gap between what you intend to do and what actually gets done. And it often leaves you feeling pretty drained, not accomplished.
Absolutely. And that whole feeling, that struggle, is exactly why we decided to really dig into this topic for this deep dive.
We've been wading through quite a pile of sources, articles, some research papers, lots of detailed notes.
All focused on this one core question. What does it really take to be productive? Productive in a way that, feels sustainable and actually leads somewhere meaningful.
Yeah, our mission today is basically to unpack what all this material says, pull out the most valuable insights, and try to figure out how you can unlock that potential. Moving beyond just doing more stuff to actually working smarter.
Because, honestly, buried in these sources were some surprising ideas, some real aha moments about what productivity even is, and maybe more importantly, why we get stuck so often.
So let's dive in. Maybe start with that fundamental thing. How are we even defining productivity here?
Good starting point. The sources really pushed back on the old way of thinking about it.
You mean the sort of factory floor idea, output per hour, pure efficiency?
Exactly, that how many widgets can I crank out model. This material argues pretty strongly that real productivity today is much more about effectiveness than just raw efficiency.
Okay, effectiveness. And how did they break that down? What does that actually look like?
Well, fundamentally, it's about achieving meaningful outcomes. That was the key phrase.
Meaningful outcomes. So, are the things you're spending your time on actually lining up with your bigger goals, your values, what you actually care about?
Precisely. It's not just about filling the hours in your day. It's making sure those hours are propelling you towards something that, actually matters to you.
That's a big shift in perspective, isn't it?
It really is. And they connected this directly to that idea of working smarter, not harder, which sounds like a cliche, maybe.
But it's not just a saying here. They meant finding more efficient paths, yes, but also using the right tools and techniques. And this came up a lot. Understanding and respecting your own energy rhythms.
Ah, yes, the energy piece. That was huge across the board. It's not just time management, it's managing your energy.
Totally. And the sources also hammered home the idea of a sustainable pace.
Right. This really struck me too. It's not about being hyper-productive in short boosts if you just burn out afterwards. That's not really productive in the long run.
No, sustainable productivity means finding a rhythm, a pace you can actually maintain consistently over time. Avoiding that boom and bust cycle.
Yeah, exactly. And sort of underpinning all of this was this idea of intentionality.
Intentionality.
Yeah.
As in consciously choosing where your focus goes.
Yes. Making deliberate choices about where you direct your limited attention and energy instead of just, reacting to every email, every notification, whatever pops up.
So the ultimate goal, based on this deep dive, isn't just a jam-packed calendar. It's about making your focused time really count.
So that you actually free up time for rest, time for family, friends, hobbies, whatever else makes up a full life.
Right. It flips the script. Instead of feeling guilty for not being busy, you focus on doing impactful work that actually creates more space.
Okay, so that's the goal, the ideal. But what about the flip side? That frustrating inaction, the feeling we sometimes label laziness. The sources had some really powerful things to say about that too.
They were very clear on this, calling it laziness as if it's some kind of character flaw. That completely misses the point, according to this material.
Yeah, that felt like a really significant reframing. They frame it almost always as a symptom of something else going on underneath.
It's rarely just about not wanting to do the work. It's usually a signal that there's some other obstacle. And recognizing those root causes is the crucial first step they identified for actually dealing with it.
Makes sense. So what were some of those common underlying causes they pointed to?
Well, one of the biggest ones cited was overwhelm and just a lack of clarity.
Ah, yes. When a task feels enormous, where you genuinely have no idea where to even begin.
Exactly. Or the end goal isn't clearly defined. Avoidance becomes almost like a self-protection mechanism. Your brain just sort of shuts down when faced with that much ambiguity.
I can relate to that. What else?
Fear came up a lot. Fear of failure, naturally. The fear of not being good enough.
Sure.
But also, surprisingly, the fear of success.
Fear of success, really? How does that work?
Well, the potential changes it might bring, maybe increased expectations, more pressure. And this fear, whether of failure or success, often shows up as perfectionism.
The if I can't do it perfectly, I won't start at all trap. Yeah.
Exactly that trap.
Uh-huh.
Then there's a lack of motivation or perceived purpose. If a task just doesn't feel meaningful to you,
Or you can't see how it connects to anything bigger you actually care about.
then mustering the internal drive to get going is incredibly hard. It feels pointless, so why bother?
Right. The sources also brought up something called decision fatigue. That was interesting.
Yeah, the idea that our capacity for making good decisions is like a muscle. It's finite, and it gets tired throughout the day.
So every little choice, what to wear, which email to open first, how to phrase that sentence.
It all chips away at your ability to make the bigger, harder decision to start or stick with a challenging task. By the time you get to the main event, your decision-making energy is already depleted.
Wow. Never thought of it quite like that. Okay, what else?
Low energy levels, plain and simple. This is fundamental. Poor sleep, bad nutrition, not moving your body enough, maybe underlying health issues.
If you don't have the basic fuel in the tank, physically and mentally, you can't expect yourself to perform complex work.
Exactly. You can't build a house without materials.
Right.
Can't be productive without energy. And related to that is burnout.
Which is more than just being tired, isn't it?
Much more. The sources linked it to chronic stress, leading to this state of profound emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion, where even simple things feel overwhelming, a deep depletion.
Okay, and the last major one.
Our environment. We live in worlds practically designed for distraction now.
Oh, tell me about it. Notifications, endless scrolling, interruptions.
They just shatter our attention spans and make that kind of deep, sustained focus incredibly difficult to achieve.
So the takeaway here is instead of beating yourself up saying, I'm lazy,
It's more productive, more accurate, really, to
Yeah.
ask, am I overwhelmed? Am I scared? Do I lack clarity? Am I exhausted? Is my environment working against me?
that shift from judgment to trying to understand the root cause that feels incredibly powerful. It moves it from I'm broken to here's a problem I can potentially solve.
Precisely. Okay, so if that's where inaction often comes from, and if real productivity is about effectiveness and sustainability, how do we actually build that? The sources laid out these strategic pillars.
Right. They really emphasize that sustainable productivity isn't about relying on sheer willpower, because that comes and goes, doesn't it?
Absolutely, it fluctuates. It's really built on establishing reliable systems and habits. Structure provides the scaffolding.
Okay, so pillar number 1.
Clarity and goal setting. This ties back directly to those root causes of overwhelm and lack of purpose.
Makes sense. Start with the why.
Exactly. The material really underlined how connecting your day-to-day tasks back to larger, meaningful goals you genuinely care about provides that essential intrinsic motivation. It fuels you when things get tough.
Purpose is fuel. I like that. And building on that why.
Setting SMART goals. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
The classic acronym. Why is that so important here?
Because that structure directly tackles the ambiguity and overwhelm we talked about. It gives you clear targets and boundaries, making goals feel less like a giant, vague cloud.
Okay. And crucially, breaking things down.
Yes, deconstructing those big, intimidating projects into smaller, manageable, immediately actionable steps.
Why is that step so effective?
Because actually completing those smaller steps creates momentum. It gives you those tangible little wins, which the sources noted are vital for keeping motivation high. You feel like you're making progress.
Right, builds confidence.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so you've got clarity. Pillar 2 moves into action, planning and prioritization.
This is where some of those well-known techniques came up, but framed within that idea of intentionality, consciously deciding where to focus.
Like the Eisenhower matrix.
Exactly. Sorting tasks based on urgency and importance.
Hmm.
Are they urgent and important? Do it now. Important but not urgent? Schedule it. Urgent but not important? Delegate it if possible. Or neither, eliminate or minimize it.
It forces that critical question. Is this truly important or just noisy and urgent? Or maybe neither.
A powerful filter. They also mentioned Brian Tracy's Eat the Frog method.
Ah, yes. Tackle the big, ugly task first thing.
Pretty much. Tackle your most difficult, most important task, your frog, right at the start of your day. The sources suggested this works partly because you get it over with.
But also because successfully tackling the hardest thing first thing builds a huge amount of confidence and momentum. Everything else feels easier after that.
Gets that weight off your shoulders immediately. Time blocking was another one cited frequently.
Scheduling specific chunks of time for specific tasks, right? Treating them like actual appointments.
Yes, and the psychological benefit noted wasn't just about allocating time, but the commitment that scheduling implies. It feels more concrete, less optional.
Like making an appointment with your focused work. What about the small stuff?
David Allen's 2-minute rule from getting things done came up.
If it takes less than 2 minutes, just do it now.
Exactly. The sources highlighted how effective this is for preventing those small, easy tasks from piling up and creating that sense of clutter and overwhelm on your to-do list. Clears the decks quickly.
Good one. And finally, reviewing things.
Yeah. Regular review, maybe daily, maybe weekly, to identify your most important tasks, your MITs, for the coming period, and to look back at your progress.
Keeps you focused and allows you to adjust course if needed. Okay, pillar 3 tackles our modern reality head-on. Focus and deep work.
Foundational to this is minimizing distractions. Seems obvious, but the source is stressed being proactive.
Turning off notifications, closing browser tabs you don't need.
Even communicating with people around you, family, colleagues, when you need a block of uninterrupted time. Setting boundaries.
A specific technique mentioned was the Pomodoro technique.
Right, developed by Francesco Cirio. Those focused 25-minute work sprints, called Pomodoros, then a short 5-minute break and a longer break after maybe 4 sprints.
What's the magic there?
The sources suggest it helps maintain concentration by breaking work into manageable chunks, but it also helps manage energy and prevent that decision fatigue because the structure is predefined. You just follow the timer.
Takes the guesswork out. What else for focus?
Creating a conducive physical environment, a clean, organized workspace, actually reduces cognitive load, frees up mental RAM.
Makes sense. Less visual clutter, less mental clutter, and a big warning against multitasking.
A very strong message.
Yeah.
The sources reinforce what the research clearly shows. We don't actually multitask. Our brains switch tasks rapidly between things.
Which is slower, leads to more errors, and is way more mentally draining than just focusing on one thing at a time. Single tasking is key.
Okay, pillar 4 was something we touched on, but it got its own focus. Energy management.
This felt really crucial and maybe something people overlook when they just think about time.
Definitely. The material was crystal clear. Productivity isn't just about managing your time. It's fundamentally about managing your physical and mental energy levels. You can have the perfect schedule, but if you're running on fumes,
It's useless. So what are the key elements here? Sleep.
non-negotiable, according to these sources. Prioritizing sufficient, high-quality sleep is critical for cognitive function, focus, mood, everything.
And fuel. Nutrition.
Yep. Nourishing your body with a balanced diet provides the sustained energy you need for focused work, avoiding those sugar crashes or mid-afternoon slumps.
Makes sense. Movement, too.
Absolutely. Moving your body exercise, even just short walks, boosts energy levels, helps manage stress, and improves focus.
And taking breaks isn't slacking off.
Quite the opposite. The sources emphasize that taking regular short breaks is essential. It allows your mind to rest, consolidate information, and refresh your capacity for focus when you return.
Getting up, stretching, looking away from the screen. Crucial.
And understanding your chronotype.
My what now?
Your natural tendency towards being a morning person or an evening person. If you have flexibility, aligning your most demanding, focus-intensive tasks with your peak energy times works with your biology, not against it.
Working with your natural rhythm. Smart. Okay, final pillar. Mindset and self-compassion.
This feels like the glue that holds it all together, doesn't it?
It really does. First part, cultivating a growth mindset.
The belief, popularized by Carol Dweck, that your abilities aren't fixed, but can be developed through effort, learning, and persistence. This fundamentally changes how you see challenges.
Instead of seeing a setback as proof you can't do it, you see it as a learning opportunity.
Exactly. A chance to figure out what went wrong and try a different approach. And tied closely to that is practicing self-compassion.
This one seems really important, especially when we talk about productivity.
Hugely important. The sources stress this heavily. You will have unproductive days, things will go wrong. It's just part of being human.
And beating yourself up about it doesn't help.
It's actively counterproductive. Harsh self-criticism is demotivating. The productive response is to acknowledge it happened, maybe try to understand why without judgment, learn what you can, and simply reset for the next day.
Being kind to yourself isn't lazy. It's actually smart for long-term motivation and well-being.
Precisely. And finally, celebrating small wins. Acknowledging and maybe even rewarding yourself for sticking to your plan or finishing a small step reinforces those positive habits and keeps the momentum going.
Okay, those 5 pillars. Clarity, planning, focus, energy, and mindset provide a really solid framework. But how does this stuff look in practice? The sources shared some examples, right? Some stories.
Yeah, they included some archetypal stories inspired by real examples, which help see how these principles get applied in different situations, because it's not one size fits all.
Right. It's helpful to see the adaptation, like Anya, the freelance designer in Berlin.
Yes, the sources described her struggling with a typical freelancer challenge, lack of structure leading to procrastination, and feeling overwhelmed.
So what did she do?
She implemented time blocking quite rigorously, creating artificial structure for her day, and used the Pomodoro technique within those blocks to manage focus and energy.
Combining Pillar 2 and Pillar 3 techniques.
Exactly. And a key insight mentioned for her was learning to define the scope of projects really clearly with clients up front. That helped reduce that initial, where do I even start, overwhelm. Ties back to Pillar 1, clarity.
Makes sense. Clear link between structure, clarity, and tackling overwhelm. Then there was Kenji, the software engineer in Tokyo.
Right. High-pressure environment. The sources said he adopted a personal Kanban system.
Kanban, like the manufacturing thing.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
A visual way to manage workflow. He had columns like to do, doing, done, and crucially, he limited the number of tasks allowed in the doing column at any one time.
Why was limiting the work in progress important?
Because it forced him to actually finish tasks before pulling new ones in. The sources said this dramatically reduced his stress from constant context switching.
That switch tasking thing we talked about.
Exactly. And it actually improved the quality and throughput of his work. A clear application of avoiding multitasking and managing workflow effectively. Pillar 3 again.
Interesting. Okay, who else? Maria, the small business owner?
In Sao Paulo, her issue was being totally swamped, trying to do everything herself in her growing business. Classic entrepreneur problem.
So how does she apply these ideas?
She used the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle. She analyzed her activities to figure out which 20% were actually generating 80% of her revenue.
Identifying the highest leverage tasks. Pillar 2, prioritization.
Right. She then focused her own energy intensely on those high-impact activities. And this was key. Hired an assistant to delegate the administrative tasks that were eating up her time but weren't core revenue drivers.
Strategic delegation. That freed her up for growth.
Yeah, exactly. Her story really highlights strategic prioritization and that sometimes difficult but essential step of letting go through delegation.
Okay, one more. David, the student in London.
Battling the classic student nemesis. Dissertation procrastination.
Been there. What worked for him?
The sources mentioned he used some practical tools like keeping a distraction list, just jotting down distracting thoughts to deal with later, instead of letting them derail him in the moment. And website blockers, things like that. Pillar 3, minimizing distractions.
But there was something else, too.
Yeah, a really significant factor highlighted for him was finding an accountability partner. Just having someone else to check in with, someone to sort of show up alongside during dedicated writing sessions made a huge difference in actually getting him to sit down and stay on task.
The power of external accountability. Sometimes we just need that little nudge. Pillar 5, maybe. Or just a practical support strategy.
Probably mix. The sources also dropped names like Ryan Holiday or General Stanley McChrystal, referencing their structured morning routines as examples of Pillar 4, energy management.
And Ariana Huffington's story of burnout leading her to champion rest, also Pillar 4.
Right. And other brief mentions like a Susan who restructured her business priorities, or a Jim who finally tamed his email inbox using time blocking. Common themes, different contexts.
It was also interesting that they noted even famous high achievers like Mozart or Leonardo da Vinci were apparently known procrastinators.
Right. But they often produce their greatest work under specific structures or deadlines, suggesting that even historically, finding ways to impose structure or manage focus was key.
It really drives home that this struggle isn't new, it's deeply human. But these principles offer concrete ways to navigate it.
And seeing them applied differently just underscores that, while the core ideas are universal, you really need to tailor the application to your own situation.
Okay, so we've got the definition, the roots of inaction, the strategic pillars, and some stories. Now let's talk quick wins. The sources offered a bunch of essential tips and tricks, things you can often try right away.
Yeah, these are super actionable. First one, prepare the night before.
Like laying out your clothes, packing lunch, maybe jotting down your top 1-3 priorities for the next day.
Exactly. The sources noted this cuts down significantly on morning decision fatigue when your willpower might be lowest. Gives you a running start.
Makes sense. Next, batch similar tasks.
Right. Instead of bouncing between email, then a report, then calls, then back to email group them, Do all your emails in one block, all your calls in another. Minimizes that inefficient context switching.
Good one. Ooh, this is a tough one for many. Learn to say no.
Crucial for protecting your time and energy. Saying no to things that don't truly align with your priorities or capacity is actually saying yes to the things that do matter.
Important framing. What about the no-zero days concept?
I like this one. On days where motivation is just completely flat, commit to doing one tiny thing towards your goal, no matter how small.
Like just organizing one file, writing one sentence, flossing one tooth.
Maybe. The point the sources emphasize is to maintain some momentum. It prevents that feeling of complete stagnation and makes it easier to get back on track tomorrow.
Keeps the engine idling at least. Okay, technology.
Leverage technology wisely. Use the tools. Calendar apps, to-do list managers like Todoist, Asana, Trello, whatever works for you. Focus apps like Freedom or Forest. Note-taking tools like Evernote or Notion.
But there was a caveat here, wasn't there?
A big one. These tools are aids. They support your system. They are not the system itself. Just downloading a new app won't magically fix procrastination if you haven't addressed the underlying issues like lack of clarity or overwhelm.
Right. The tool serves the strategy, not the other way around. Good point. What else?
Stay hydrated. Seriously, even mild dehydration messes with your cognitive function, focus, and energy. Keep water handy.
Simple, but easy to forget. Drink your water.
Experiment with music or white noise. For some people, the right kind of background sound can create a focus bubble, blocking out distractions. Worth trying different things.
Okay, declutter your digital space too.
Yes. Organize your files, clean up that desktop disaster zone, unsubscribe from email lists you never read. Digital clutter creates mental clutter.
Find an accountability partner. We saw this with David's story.
Yeah, sharing your goals and having regular check-ins with someone else adds that layer of external commitment. It can be really powerful for sticking to things.
And the final tip?
Continuously reflect and adjust. This is key. Productivity isn't a destination you arrive at. It's an ongoing practice, a process.
So regularly stepping back and asking, what's working for me right now? What's not? What could I try differently?
Exactly. Be willing to experiment, tweak your system, adapt as your life and priorities change. It's about building your personalized approach.
Not just copying someone else's system wholesale.
Right. So our journey through all these sources, it really highlights that becoming more effective, navigating that urge to procrastinate. It's not about finding one secret hack.
No, it really feels like a continuous process. It starts with self-awareness, right? Understanding why you get stuck. Then it's about experimenting with these different techniques.
And constantly refining your own systems, your own habits, building something personalized that respects your energy, aligns with what's actually meaningful to you.
And, crucially, prioritizes your well-being just as much as your output. It's not about squeezing every last drop out of yourself.
Exactly. Be patient with yourself through that process. Celebrate the small steps, the progress you make along the way.
Because, as these sources consistently showed, when you understand what productivity really means for you, when you honestly look at those root causes of inaction,
And when you deliberately apply these kinds of strategies, these pillars and tips, you really can unlock a different level of potential, a more effective, sustainable way of working and living.
the power to be more productive, more effective, it isn't really some external thing you need to find or buy.
No. According to this material, it really lies within you, waiting to be cultivated through that understanding, that practice, that self-compassion.
So, as you reflect on this deep dive, maybe consider this. Which of those roots of inaction, overwhelm, fear, lack of clarity, exhaustion, which one felt most familiar in your own experience? And thinking about the pillars and tips, which single strategy feels like the most promising place for you to start experimenting this week? Just one thing. Something to think about as you move forward.